Yeah, yeah, yeah. A real robot. Yo, yo, yo. I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper, I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper. This is a keepsake, ayy, and you can keep that tucked away. Some gon' come with the lies. Remember them when you pray. Some gon' cry when they die, but you don't worry about the K. Look, I done whipped up away, my time is short, so I'ma live it today. That shit was real, what happened to them slaves? Ay, but you gotta be brave. This a land of the free. Gotta move like waves. Ay, put the pen to the pad. I give them path for the rage. Then I put them on a path to take them all up the stage. I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper, I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper. This is a keepsake, ayy. You can use this right away. Some gon' come with the truth. Honor them when you pray. Some gon' laugh about their life. They don't worry about delays. Look, I done whipped up away that level's real when you can use it today. Don't worry about how you're gonna get paid. Lord, give it free, take it away, ayy. Don't you wanna be free? Remove that rage. There's a path to the light, ayy. Don't misuse those ways. We float with the truth. Gotta move like waves. I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper, I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper.
Yo, shalom. We back at it, man. We back at it. 7 gang, source gang over everything. You know how we rocking, man. You know what we do on this channel? We disseminate information. So that's what we're here to do. Today's topic is dealing with divergence dating and why it needs to be explained. Because we have a lot of people out there that, purport to know scientific literature or material, but they never expound or explicate any of the topics that deal with scientific material. So today we're going to deal with divergence dating because this is being reverberated in the community. But the people that are reverberating are either uninformed or misinformed. For example, when we're dealing with haplogroups, someone says, oh, haplogroup DE, it diverged 70,000 years ago or 70,000 years old. That's what divergence dating is talking about. It's talking about when these haplogroups, people groups, populations diverge and they first arise on the scene. And what people do is they lean on these dates as if they're actual dates, as if they're concrete dates. For example, we know when Hadrian built the wall in Britain, right? We know when that happened. That happened in the 2nd century CE. That's a known fact, a known date. They treat these dates as if it's the same date. It's the same dating system, or it's at the same accuracy of Hadrian building his wall in Britain. That is not the case. And if anyone's doing that, they're misinformed and uninformed. And they're not cultured in the field of science or any other sciences, any other concrete sciences, by that way, biology, chemistry, and so on and so forth. So today, we're going to do what we've been doing here on the channel, and we're going to actually educate our audience, give you source material to refer to. And at the end of this, I also want to share my new Facebook group, Genesis 49ers Resources Anyone's free to join, and I will give you source material. If you have any questions that you want me to directly answer, you can ask or pose those questions respectfully on that Facebook group. So I will be sharing that at the end of the show, and all you guys are welcome to come and pick my brain, or give any critiques that you may have with the material that's being presented here. We're open to critique, but we're not open to foolery and disrespect. I'm gonna just let you guys know that now. So what we're going to go into diving to today is divergence dating. Like I said, people lean on this and say, well, haplogroup E was 70,000 years old, or and E1B1A came around 40,000 years. They throw these dates out there as if they're definitive, and they're not. So we're going to explain to you and show you through scientific resources and sources to elucidate the matter. Because what happens is many of these people have a surface level understanding, and they haven't taken the time to read up on these claims. All they have done is did a Wikipedia search, a Google search, and the buck pretty much stopped there. With here, we try to give you guys the best information that we can get, that money can buy, so to speak, and really study these things and get a great understanding and a grasp of it instead of just, mimicking or parakeeting certain phrases. We try to give you a decent understanding of these things. So with that being stated, let's get right into the presentation. Google has to recognize that it's open so we can share the screen. And like I said, you guys will get some understanding tonight on this matter. Here it is right here. Shalom to everybody. Shalom to Yahia, I see you. Shalom to Arya, Bama Thoroughbred. Let's go. All right, so from here we can go to view. We're going to go to view. And we want the reading view. All right, so you guys should be able to see that. Understanding DNA, divergence dating, and its implications. Before we get into it, we're going to, give you some vocabulary words, and classic education fashion. Parsimony explained. This is from berkeley.edu under the phylogenetics. The parsimony principle is basic to all science and tells us to choose the simplest scientific explanation that fits the evidence. In terms of tree building, that means that all other things being equal, the best hypothesis is the one that requires the fewest evolutionary changes. This is what you guys need to understand. Majority of science, concrete sciences, we're talking about, your fields like biology, astrophysics, and stuff of that nature, they use parsimony principles because there's no way you can know things with 100% certainty. That's why they have the uncertainty principle as well. Because they don't own time machine, they can't warp time, they can't go back and interview certain people and see the events unfold as it is happening. So there's things that they have to infer, and there's things that are in the dark that we may never know, and that's just a reality, and we have to come to grasp with. So the parsimony principle, just what it says, it's about picking out the best hypothesis, the one that requires the fewest evolutionary changes or assumptions. So this is being used, and it's a basic principle in science, and majority of science consists of it, right? So you have to keep that in mind. It's all based on a hypothesis. When we're dealing with divergent time estimation, divergent time dating, when someone brings up, well, haplogroup D came out 70,000 years ago, haplogroup A diverged 120,000 years ago to 200,000 years ago. These numbers are based off assumptions and hypotheses. These are not concrete dates. Again, this is not the same as saying Hadrian built the wall in Britain in the 2nd century. This is not the same as saying Titus Vespasian invaded Jerusalem in 70 AD. This is not the same thing. You can't come to these dates concretely. These are just estimations based upon assumptions, based upon mutation rates, which we know mutations are random. So we will know that that variable, that number will always be random. There's no way to ascertain a concrete divergence date. This is from Statistical Methods in Molecular Evolution by Rasmus Nielsen. Nielsen, page number 229, says during most of the period following Zuckhandel and Pauling's seminal papers, divergence time estimations from molecular sequence data has centered on the hypothesis of a constant chronological rate of sequence change. So, what is a scientific hypothesis? This is from livescience.com. The definition of a hypothesis by Alina Bradford, July 26, 2017. A hypothesis is a suggested solution. I want you guys to, notate that. A hypothesis is a suggested solution because what happens is people take assumptions and hypotheses and they reverberate it and they teach it as truth or as fact. And we're going to give you the word for that. There's a word that defines people that act like that or speak in that manner. There's a word for that. And we're going to give you that word. So a hypothesis is a suggested solution for an unexplained occurrence that does not fit into a current accepted scientific theory. Remember, this whole divergence dating thing is based on a hypothesis. Okay? The basic ideas of a hypothesis is that there is no predetermined outcome. For a hypothesis to be termed a scientific hypothesis, it has to be something that can be supported or refuted through carefully crafted experimentation or observation. This is called falsifiability and testability. And this is why I said if your theories, if your hypotheses are not falsifiable, it's not good science. It has to be falsifiable. It says this is called falsifiability and testability, an idea that was advanced in the mid-20th century by a British philosopher named Karl Popper, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. A key function of this step in the scientific method is deriving predictions from the hypothesis about the results of future experiments and then performing those experiments to see whether they support the predictions. And this is the golden standard of science, predictions, being able to make a hypothesis, but also your hypotheses are able to create predictions that are confirmed. For example, the people that discovered, I can't think of their names right now, the cosmic microwave background, they said that the universe should have a uniform temperature. And I forget the temperature, but they guessed it right. We should see a temperature, a certain temperature. I forget the temperature. You guys can look that up. And, later on when they got the edifices and equipment to actually measure the temperature of the universe, they found out that that temperature that they found was correct. So their hypothesis was solidified through their prediction. It says a hypothesis is usually written in the forms of an if-then statement, according to the University of California. This statement gives a possibility if and explains what may happen because of the possibility then. The statement could also include may. So this is why I always say stuff like if Jacob existed, because again, I have to allow my theories, my hypothesis to be falsifiable. If not, then I'm not really doing good science. So again, with all of this information, this is what a hypothesis is. It's a suggested solution. It's what you were taught in school, an educated guess that can be falsified. It's not something that's, as some of these dogmatic people say, it's just 100% truth and 100% fact. And the way they use it as if it's 100% truth, 100% fact, which is false. A scientific hypothesis is the initial building block in the scientific method. Many describe it as an educated guess based on prior knowledge and observation. While this is true, the definition can be expanded. A hypothesis also concludes an explanation of why the guess may be correct, according to the National Science Teacher Association. So this is what a hypothesis is, and this is what divergence dating hinges on. Okay, now on psychologytoday.com, they explain what scientism is. And this is what people on the internet are invoking. You're invoking scientism. You're not invoking empirical science. You're invoking scientism. When you start making your ideas about science to be religious or dogmatic. So this is from an article called Scientism When Science Becomes a Religion, posted November the 13th, 2019. An alternative term for this belief system is scientism, since it is a paradigm that has been derived from some of the findings of modern science. As the psychologist Emantis Bruce has described it, science is an open-ended exploration of reality based on logical thinking about empirical observations. Scientism is the adherence to a materialistic version of reality that confines investigation to those sorts of things that are permitted by materialism. So they give a differentiation here. What science is supposed to be open-ended. So when people say, well, how can you deal with science and you believe in God? Well, that because science is a field. It's not a preposition. You can many of scientists are theists. You guys do realize that, right? Many of the scientists that are working actively in the fields are theists. Science is a tool. It's a conceptual tool. It's a field. It's supposed to be open-ended. An exploration of reality. It has no bearings on your prepositions or what school of thought you come from, as far as like if you believe in a God or not. So some people be misusing the term science, and they fall into this category, scientism, where they have pretty much created scientism or created science into a religion. It says one of the characteristics of dogmatic belief systems is that their adherents accept assumptions as proven facts. And that's what we see with divergence dating. Divergence dating is an assumption. It's based on an assumption. It's based on a hypothesis. It is not a fact in itself. So when people try to quote, oh, well, this happened 70,000 years ago as if it's a concrete fact, you are invoking scientism, not science, scientism. Read again. One of the characteristics of dogmatic belief systems is that their adherents accept assumptions as proven facts. And that's what we see. You accept the assumption that we all come from a shared ancestor with chimpanzees that was ape-like. That's an assumption. There's been no proof of that. We only have assumptions. And we can read as much scientific material that you want. It's going to boil down to parsimony. That's why I brought that out first. It's going to boil down to assumptions, not facts. Once you start trying to pass off the assumption as proven facts, you're falling into this category known as scientism. And that's what we see with divergence dating. Oh, this happened 70,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago. Then tell them to prove it. Give me an ancient specimen of that age with that DNA dating back that far. They cannot do it. And like Klyasov says it in his papers, a fossil is a fossil. If it doesn't have any DNA, or we can't exhume the DNA or extract the DNA and sequence the genome, it doesn't help your argument. So let me read it one more time. One of the characteristics of dogmatic belief systems is that their adherents accept assumption as proven fact. Let me make sure that this is blown up on the screen. Okay, it is. Let me go back. See, we actually teach here at the source. We actually give edifying information here. You know, what these other dudes do is scientism. And a lot of you Israelites, y'all not off the hook. You do this too, but you do this with your dogmatic belief or way of looking at things. Because, you know, for example, Deuteronomy 23:7 is always used as some kind of blood quantum, blood quantum law. Well, Deuteronomy 23:7 says, well, after you mix, you got to go, you can come back to being an Israelite after the third generation. And the scripture don't even say that. But you've been using your assumption as a fact for years. But when you go to the scripture, it doesn't say that. So we can't be hypocrites here. Israelites got to clean up their act too. It says, one of the characteristics of dogmatic belief systems is that the adherents accept assumptions as proven facts. This is certainly true of scientism. For example, it is a fact that consciousness exists and that it is associated with neurological activity, but the assumption that consciousness is produced by neurological activity is questionable. And this is called the dualist model. So I am a adherent to the dualist model, where I believe that our conscience and our physical body are two separate entities that work together in tandem. But materialist people say no. Well, our consciousness is a direct a direct effect of our neurological activity, which we have no proof of that. There's no evidence of that at all. But we can see them as separate entities that need each other to coexist on this plane as we call reality. All right, so this is what scientism is. You can see what people invoke this. You can see how they come to their conclusions. They use scientism where they pretty much just look at the assumptions. We've seen that on the channel before. When Abu came on here, he just read what the scientists assumed and didn't go to the evidence. The evidence doesn't say what they assumed. You know, for example, with J1P58 saying that it could have arose in West Asia, or, you know, it could have arose in the Middle East. Okay, that's their assumption. But what did they find? They found a body in the ground in the Caucasus of Georgia, 13,000 years old, with J1P58. That cannot be questioned. We know where they found it at. We can see where it was. Oldest specimen was in Georgia, the country Georgia, right next to Russia. That kills the assumption. You can assume all damn day, but the facts are the facts. So this is what they fall into. This is the category they fall into: scientism. And they do this with divergent dating as well. When they say, well, this happened 70,000 years ago, this happened 100,000 years ago, ask them to give you verifiable proof. They can't do it. All they can do is give you a paper that says it's so. They can't give you empirical, observable evidence. Ancient DNA provides a more sure dating mechanism. This is from Ethno-Linguistic Prehistory, the Peopling of the World from the Perspective of Language, Genes, and Material Culture by George von Drime, page number 36. Very good book. Expensive, very good book. It's going to run you about $150, but it's a great book, you know. It says, sometimes, however, the time depths being revealed for the spread of certain haplogroups by means of ancient DNA, which provides surer dating than calculated correlations times. Let me read that again. Sometimes, however, the time depths being revealed for the spread of certain haplogroups by means of ancient DNA, which provides surer dating than calculated correlation times. Why does it provide sure dating? Because one is based on empirical data, based on a body that we found in the ground, and we dug up and we exhumed the body and we sequenced the genome. We know where it was. We can give a timestamp. Boom. The calculated correlation time is based off an assumption, which is going to say here, sometimes lying well outside of the comfort zone of some historical linguists. Of course, correlations times are based on a number of assumptions. What did we just read? I just read to you what scientism was. We can show you that it's a dogmatic belief system. One of the characteristics of dogmatic belief systems is that their adherents accept assumptions as proven facts. But some people are accepting the correlation times or divergence times as facts, as proven fact, and it's not, and it's a assumption. Of course, correlation times are based on a number of assumptions, which sometimes necessarily undergo modification as our understanding grows. Moreover, the dating of divergence of genetic sequences may not be simply equated with the date of divergence of populations, since healthy populations of any size harbor a certain degree of genomic diversity. You guys are following this. So correlation times or divergence dating is based off a number of assumptions. It's not concrete. And if you just take those assumptions as facts and try to bludgeon people with it as facts, you are not dealing with science. You are dealing with scientism. You have to let people know it's an assumption. You're presenting it as if it's true, it's 100% fact, it's concrete, but it's actually an assumption. Tell people that it's an assumption. Tell people that it's a postulation. The people don't present it that way. But that's fine. That's what we're here for. We're going to do that. We're going to elucidate information. The same rules do not apply to dogs. So the same logic that they use for the hominins or the humans, they just disregard when it comes to dogs because the numbers are too astronomical. This is from The Domestication of Humans by Roger G. Bednarik, page number 59. It is interesting to note that the genetic clock archaeologists so ardently subscribed to is rejected by them when it is applied to the dog, implying it split from the wolf occurred 135,000 years ago. So they reject the genetic clock, the molecular clock, divergence dating when it comes to the dog because it gives them a date of 135,000 years ago. And this is why they don't do it. Here it is right here. In the second case, they disallow it because there is no paleontological evidence for dogs before about 15,000 years ago. And remember what we just read about DNA? Ancient DNA is more sure dating than calculated correlation times. And they're using that same principle for dogs. They're saying, listen, we don't have any paleontological evidence for this, existence prior to this point. So how the hell are we going to invoke 135,000 years? Because again, these correlation dates, these divergence dates, these dates are based off assumptions. It says in the second case, they disallow it because there is no paleontological evidence for dogs before about 50,000 years ago. However, in this, they seem to be mistaken. This raises the question of why the same restraint in relying on genetic indices has not been exercised with hominins. So why don't we use the same logic we use with dogs with hominins? I'm going to tell you why, because we have scientism going on. It's all about pushing a worldview or a paradigm when science is supposed to be open-ended. It says, and why an implausible catastrophic scenario has been so eagerly embraced concerning human species. It's all inferred. So this is from Molecular Photo Fitting, Predicting Ancestry and Phenotypes Using DNA, another expensive book, page number 208 by Tony N. Frutakis. The data divergence between populations can be calculated from randomly chosen markers in the human genome using these genetic distances. Based on the neutral theory of human evolution in the molecular clock hypothesis. Remember, we already explained what a hypothesis is. It's pretty much an assumption, suggested solution. Rooted phylogenetic trees provide a chronological basis for divergence inferred from measures of molecular distance. This is all inferred. So when they try to present these things, these assumptions, inferring is an assumption, you're assuming. When they try to present these dates to you as if it's concrete facts, you just point them to these sources here. You're giving me assumptions, man. Why are you not using the word assumption? Why are you not using the word inferred? You have to say it like that because you're presenting the people. What you're doing is being a snake oil salesman. You're being disingenuous. That's what you're doing. You're saying that, oh, well, we know that. No, we don't know. And this is why, you got people like Architect. That's very unscientific, by the way, what Architect is teaching. Like, he's not on board. He's not cultured at all. You just tell how he speaks. When you start saying scientists know, they don't believe or they don't think, you don't read scientific literature, don't you? Because majority of the scientific literature is based on their assumptions and their beliefs. Majority. Let's keep going. Exaggeration of time. So when we look at these divergence dates, like with DE 70,000 years ago, L3, mitochondrial DNA L3, 70,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, haplogroup A, so on and so forth, it's really exaggerations of time based on these assumptions that we brought up earlier. And the source is ancient history of the Arbans, bearers of haplogroup R1b from Central Asia to Europe, 1,500 years before the present by Klyasov, the Academy of DNA Genealogy in Newton, USA. These assumptions and resulting calculations are based typically on population mutation rates. Read this again. These assumptions and resulting calculations are based typically on population mutation rates, which commonly exaggerate the chronological estimates of migrations and events by 200 to 400%. Read that again. Which commonly exaggerate the chronological estimates of migration and events by 200 to 400%. This is a geneticist writing this down. This paper has been peer-reviewed. Why is this not redacted? Because it's the truth. And again, science must be open-ended. You have to bring stuff that's not favorable to what everyone's saying, and you have to bring stuff that is. So why is this not being brought to the forefront when people bring up these divergence dates? Because A, they either don't know, or B, they're just, misinformed. They don't understand science. They think science or scientists are the arbitrators of truth. They're not. Says, which commonly exaggerate the chronological estimates of migrations and events by 200 to 400%, since they are based on crude, artificial, and unrealistically naive and generalized reasoning. Read that again. Since they are based on crude, artificial, and unrealistically naive and generalized reasoning. From the words of Kyle Solve, a geneticist. Here's another one. 200, 300% greater than genealogical mutation rates. Source DNA genealogy, mutation rates, and some historical evidence written in the Y chromosome. And this is also by Kyle Yosov in the European Genetics Journal in 2009. It says the evolutionary mutation rate of 0.00069 mutations per marker per generation was empirically derived from 3 different populations and 3 different kinds of haplotypes using a number of questionable assumptions. And it was recommended for use not in genealogical or pedigree-based studies, but in population studies. Criteria for determining when a series of haplotypes represents a population and when it represents a genealogical situation were not provided. As a result, this mutation rate has been widely used in the academic literature quite indiscriminately, often or always resulting in time spans to common ancestors some 200 to 300% greater compared to those attained with genealogical mutation rates. Again, you guys that are pushing this dogmatic narrative are not studying this material. You are not doing any research. None of you guys. You faking and perpetrating a fraud, man. Y'all not reading this information. But that's okay. That's what we're here for. We're going to give the people the information. We're going to take out our time, study, read, you know what I'm saying, and disseminate the information for the people's sake. Again, these dates, 200, 300% greater compared to those obtained with genealogical mutation rates. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a genealogical mutation rate and what those look like. All right. Here's one example of a genealogical MRCA, meaning most recent common ancestor. This is from Evolutionary Genetics, Concepts, and Case Studies by Charles W. Fox and Jason B. Wolfe, page number 172, 173. This book was written by geneticists. The time until all humans share a common ancestor along the male or female line, that is, the time until the genetic ancestor for all human Y chromosomes or mitochondrial genomes has been estimated at tens to hundreds of thousands of years. And remember what we read, these are based off assumptions. Watch this. However, the most recent common ancestors in terms of the pedigree of all living humans might have been surprisingly more recent, perhaps only 2,000 to 7,000 years ago. In other words, across all loci in the genome, the common ancestor for the genealogy whose MRCA is the smallest may have lived in historical times. This is what he's talking about when you're using the pedigree or genealogical mutation rate versus the population mutation rate, which gives all these assumptions, which makes a common ancestor grow from 200 to 300%. See right here says, often or always resulting in time spans to common ancestors some 200 to 300% greater compared to those obtained with genealogical mutation rates. When you take all those assumptions away, you get numbers like this. I hope y'all noting this, man. 2,000 to 7,000 years ago. It's a big difference. Let's keep going. Population mutation rates. Same paper by Kyle Yosov. All this makes the population mutation rates even less meaningful than those just neglecting reverse mutations. In other words, results of calculations of time spans to common ancestors using population mutation rates applied to a mass of haplotypes without sorting them out into branches can be substituted with a qualitative and kind expression. It was a long time ago. It's better for you just to say it was a long time ago than to come up with these assumptions and these long drawn out dates, which blow everything out of proportion by 200, 300, 400%. To add insult to injury, mutation rates are not even known with certainty. The source is the genetics of African population in health and disease. Muteza E. Ibrahim, page number 2627. It is reasonable to postulate that modern humans had sufficient time to become differentiated at multiple levels. This differentiation is inferable from many data sets. Although mutation rates are not known with certainty and confidence intervals are large. So what they're making these assumptions with is based off mutation rates. This is how they come up with divergence dating. This is how they come with the estimations. I think it's D equal RT. The rate, I think it's rate equals UT. Yeah, R equals UT, where U is the mutation rate and the T is the time and the R is the rate. That's how they come up with it. But they don't know the mutation rate because it's never known with certainty because it's a random variable, as we're going to see. Mutation rates are confounded. This is statistical methods in molecular evolution. Another geneticist, Rasmus Nielsen, and also Ibrahim Muteza is also a geneticist as well. So when solely DNA or protein sequences data are available, amounts of evolution can be estimated, but rates and times are confounded. This confounding is problematic whether or not the molecular clock hypothesis is correct. This is why you can't present these dates of 70,000, 100,000. Oh, we came from these ancestors that lived 200,000 years ago, haplogroup 8. You can't do that because you can't present it as a 100% concrete fact. It's an assumption. It's based off an assumption. It's putative. Why it's problematic. Same book, page number 236. In the absence of fossils or other information external to the sequence data, the rates and times cannot be separated, and only their product. The expected amount of evolution can be estimated, although infinitely long sequences could conceivably lead to a perfect estimate of the expected amount of evolution per site. The confounding of rates and time means that even in the ideal situation of infinitely long sequences, neither rates nor times can be estimated solely from molecular data. You really can't get a date from molecular data itself. You just can't do it. That's why it's best to just wait till you find a DNA sample in the ground and exhume it from there and say, okay, we know that this DNA existed 13,000 years ago. That's the best way to do it. Because in the absence of fossil or other information, that's what the paragraph begins with. You don't have any fossil information that can say, okay, haplogroup D arose 70,000 years ago. No one dug up a fossil 70,000 years old and said, okay, here's haplogroup D. And we don't see any of his antecedents until later on. We don't have any information like that. This is all based off assumptions. Since we don't have that, neither rates nor times can be estimated solely from molecular data, according to the geneticist Rasmus Nielsen, who wrote statistical methods in molecular evolution. Fossil records usefulness. And he touches on this on page 238. A good fossil record can help to differentiate between the shared rate scenario and the molecular clock hypothesis, but often it can be challenging to compare these two possibilities when all sequences in a data set are isolated at effectively the same time. So we run into issues with that even if we did have a good fossil record. Again, it can only be inferred. Same book, page number 249. With only occasional exceptions, the process of evolution is not amendable to direct observation. Therefore, the changes that have transformed DNA sequences over time can only be inferred. So these dates can only be inferred because the rate can only be inferred. We're basing off a random variable known as a mutation rate. Divergence dating is uncertain. Same book, page 249. Given only the trajectory of rates over time, the expected number of changes can be determined, but the actual number is a random variable. This randomness increases the uncertainty of divergence dating. So these dates are not factual. So when you see someone say haplogroup D arose 70,000 years ago, haplogroup A 120,000 years ago, and then it split the BT 100,000 years ago, and then FM89 came out at this time. These dates are uncertain. They're not fact. They're not concrete. And these people have to start, we're going to press you to start teaching it that way instead of just throwing the data out there as if it's fact. This randomness increases the uncertainty of divergence dating. Fossils cannot be used to accurately calibrate molecular clocks. Same book, 249, 250. Conventionally, fossil information has been incorporated into molecular clock analysis in the form of calibration points. Adoption of calibration points implies that fossil evidence can precisely pinpoint the time of an internal node. Unfortunately, fossil data are not usually so directly informative. Geological dating of fossils has associated uncertainty. So when they dig stuff out of the ground, they say, well, this ground, we measured it, it was in this layer, it was this time period. Even that has a degree of associated uncertainty about that in geological time dating. Since moreover, the probability is almost zero that a particular fossil is a remnant of that exact organism that harbored the ancestral gene corresponding a specific node on a phylogeny. Branch or trunk is what a node is. All right, let's continue. Parsimony method. We explained what parsimony was in the earlier parts of this video. Page number 463, same book, Statistical Methods in Molecular Evolution by Rasmus Nielsen. Since the seminal works of Cavalli, Savorsson, Edwards, and Felsenstein, the maximum likelihood method has been widely used for inferring molecular phylogenies. And when we see the word phylogeny, that's just a scientific way of saying family tree. None of the common methods for estimating phylogeny, such as the distant measures method, parsimony methods, and ML, can estimate the true phylogenetic tree with 100% confidence. So I'm hoping you guys seeing that. So why are we using this data as a priori or as if it's 100% fact when the experts in the field are telling you this is random, this is an assumption, we can't? It confounds the information. This data, it has an element of uncertainty. Why is this not being presented to you by these so-called experts like Unc Katek, these self-proclaimed scientists? It's because they're not studying this information. They don't read them damn selves. They're surface level researchers, and we prove it every day on the source. Let's keep going. Again, it's all inferred. We're going to read from this chapter here. Chapter 7, inferring evolutionary processes from DNA sequence data. Inferring. These are assumptions. Okay. This is the book we're reading from. Evolutionary Genetics, Concepts and Analysis and Practice by Glenn Peter and Mark Revenet. Page number 148 and 149. They're dealing with molecular clocks and the assumptions, right? A large number of studies have used the relationship between the extent of molecular divergence and substitution rates in order to estimate divergence time between pairs of species. An example is provided in figure 7.1. Amino acid substitutions in A and B hemoglobin appears to have been fairly constant throughout vertebrate evolutionary history and show a nearly linear relationship with the time of divergence among species and taxonomic groups. Such molecular clocks should, however, be interpreted with care. The calculation is based on some critical assumptions. What did I tell you? This is directly from an evolutionary genetics textbook. This is how you could tell when people are actually reading this information, digesting this information, and disseminating the information. Because this should be a talking point from these people that claim to be, involved in the fields of sciences. This is how I know you're not cultured. The calculation is based on some critical assumptions that the mutation rate is constant and that substitutions accumulate by. And we're going to read the rest of this, but I want to make note of this. It says such molecular clocks should, however, be interpreted with care. And that's not what's happening, especially on YouTube when these people want to argue. Then they don't care about this information because they haven't dove in, they haven't read it. They haven't investigated anything. They just went to Wiki and saw a number attached with a haplogroup and ran with it. That the mutation rate is constant and the substitutions accumulate by random genetic drift and not by selection. That is, it assumes that the neutral theory is correct. If natural selection has affected species diversion at a given gene, or there has been some other violation of the neutral theory, our time estimates would be incorrect. An important empirical question is, therefore, how well the neutral theory approximates molecular evolution and whether the assumptions of molecular clock model are easily violated. If the clock model was a good approximation, we would have an extremely powerful tool for reconstruction of the evolutionary past, including timing, important events, as speciation. There are, however, obviously caveats to the molecular clock model. For example, mutation rates are not constant and they evolve among species and even among human populations. So this has been falsified. Because if it was, we would have this extremely powerful tool that could reconstruct past events, but we don't have that because this is all based on assumption. It's based on a hypothesis. That's it. Because we know mutation rates are random, so therefore the neutral theory cannot be correct, as we read earlier from Ramos. Now, to package this all up in a bow, I want to read this article for Forbes, Science Does Not Reveal Truth, because again, the notion is that people that invoke scientism, that everything scientists say is true, regardless, and they take the assumptions as proven facts. Remember, we read that earlier. That's a trait of a dogmatic religious group when they take assumptions as proven fact. Science Does Not Reveal Truth by the astrophysicist Paul M. Sutter. This was published on Forbes. It says, it is a pretty popular question, apparently going back several thousand years and over the centuries and millennia. Many people have tried to seek out the truth or reveal it or grapple with the truth or wrestle with it or at the very least come to terms with it. And while science is a powerful force in understanding the way the world works, it is not truth. To draw the distinction, there are facts. There are things we observe about the world around us. We observe the shifting of the light from distant galaxies. We observe the mutations over generations in DNA. We can see chemicals combine and interact. But science itself isn't just a collection of facts about the natural world. That's only part of the story. The bigger part of the story is that what we do with those facts. And what we do is try to interpret them and understand them and fold them into a larger picture that we can use to make predictions about the behavior of those same systems in the natural world. So again, this is an honest, elucidation of what science actually is. It's just a bunch of people that's making an interpretation on things they observe. This is the part that's being left out. Again, that's why I brought up the parsimony principle, where they try to use or invoke the hypothesis that uses the less assumption, the least amount of assumptions or evolutionary changes. Occam's razor, as they call it. It said, and all of our models and theories are representations and approximations of reality as we see it. That is not truth. The biggest giveaway is that scientific theories change with time. As we acquire new information or new data, we have to update all our beliefs. And how can a belief be true if it's subject to change at a moment's notice? Science represents reality, and we try to be as faithful and accurate as possible so we can get an even deeper and even more fundamental understandings of the way the world works. I'm not the one to tell you what truth is, and neither are scientists. At least when it comes to speaking about science, we know that we know about the universe through observation, and those observations are flawed and subject to bias and interpretation and experimental uncertainty. And yes, some observations can be flat out wrong and will later be corrected or updated in the future. And that is the presentation. Short, sweet, to the point. So I hope you guys learned something from this information, man. Again, you guys that are dealing with scientism and using assumptions as proven facts, you're not dealing with science. You're dealing with scientism. You're pretty much dealing with dogma. You're dealing with a dogmatic religious practice. Everything scientists say, everything that they spew is not grounded in truth or concrete fact. Same thing with divergence dating. And if anybody has anything to oppose the sources that were provided in the video. All right. Any questions? I would like to direct you guys to my Facebook group. If you have any questions, you can go there freely. And while you're on there, we will be sharing sources and information there. So anybody's welcome, as long as you are being respectful, you're not coming with no disrespect. And you're keeping your question geared towards topics, then we can rock and we can build and we can grow. But anything other than that, this group is not for that. So I'm going to show you guys the group if I can open it here. Oh my, right here, Genesis 49ers resources. So yeah, so if you go to Facebook, search the group Genesis 49ers resources. You have any questions of any of the material on any of the videos, you can go here and we will do our best to answer your questions. But this is what the group looks like. We're currently at 9 members. Genesis 49ers resources. Like I said, this is where you need to get your information from, as far as, questions dealing with the video. I post sources, source material, and information. And if you have any questions, like, where did you get that from? Where, I can pull up the book or whatnot, because I own my books. So, So again, study group for us to share information. If you guys have any questions, you can go to Genesis 49ers resources and post your questions there. Just want to share that with you guys. The group is called Genesis 49ers Resources. Ramal Yahoo. So if you go to Facebook and search the group, I'll try to put the link in the description. Let me do that right now. We actually have another show coming in about 2 hours. We're going to try to get Ivria here to do a presentation, but I want to bring this out real quick. Right, we deal with sources here, man. Y'all deal with assumptions. Let me copy this. You said you should join the Hebrew Spear. I haven't heard of the Hebrew Spear, but I'll check them out. But make sure if you're watching this video and you want to, one-on-one questions or whatnot, join Genesis 49ers Resources. And, hopefully we can elucidate information, or if it's a question that you have that you're struggling with as far as what was presented in one of the videos, we'll try to clear that up for you there. And that way you can interact with us daily and throughout the day, and we can touch on those key points. All right, let me try to put this in the chat so you guys can have the link for the viewing audience that wants to participate. And hopefully it's going to be helpful for you in your journey and your studies. All right, let me see if I can copy and paste this. Copy and paste it, put it in the chat for you guys. All right, there it is. There's the link. So you guys can click that link there, and you'll be directed to Genesis 49ers Resources. And again, as long as you don't come with no foolery, you're going to be good there. But if you come with foolery, you come with disrespect, then you're getting yanked. We're not going to deal with it. So again, the page is Genesis 49ers Resources. I will be, updating the page, daily, and trying to, spark up conversation. Like I said, if you have any questions, I see a lot of questions get posted on the YouTube. I don't always have access to my YouTube directly, so it's best to reach me on this platform, and I think it's a better platform. I can share images. I can show you where I'm getting the information from. You can actually see it for yourself and make a judgment from there. So again, Genesis 49ers Resources on Facebook, and the link is in the chat. So if you guys want to, go over there and join, anyone can join. Pose your questions there. Your critiques, pose your critiques. We're open to critique. Whatever you want to critique, you can pose them there, and we can go from there. Because I know a lot of people are not. Some people are not as brave, shall I say, to click the link and come and chat with us. Directly. You can chat with us here. I'm not going to have a debate with you on there. I'm going to tell you that for sure. But if you have a question or critique, I will entertain that. But to conclude the lesson, man, anyone coming with divergent dating and trying to stick it with you like it's a concrete fact, it's an assumption. It's not a proven fact. And if they treat it as a proven fact, then they're just being a dogmatic religious bigot at that point. You know, you're not dealing with science at that point. You're dealing with scientism. As we, showed throughout the presentation. I try to keep these things short and sweet. I don't want to, hit you guys with, information overload. So if you guys just getting here, you can rewind and I'm about to end the stream. Again, you can click that link that's in the chat right now and join Genesis 49ers resources. Any questions about the information that we provide on the channel, you can pose them there and we will do our best to answer them. All right. All right. Shalom to my brothers. Let me make sure I didn't miss nothing in the comments. Everybody just basically saying shalom. Yeah, I mean, I'll look into it. Man. Hebrew Spear. Is that on Facebook? I'll look into it, but I don't know about all that, because I'm trying to run this over here. So I don't know if I can be assistance with them that much on, curating information, to the level that they might be looking forwards to. Looking forward. All right, man. I'm going to end the lesson. I hope that it was enlightening and you guys got something out of this. Like I said, anybody try to hit you with 100,000, 200,000 years, you start telling them to provide evidence, concrete evidence, not just a statement or an assumption written down on a paper and published. It's a big difference. Oh, it's an app. Okay, yeah, I'll check it out, man. I'll check it out. Matter of fact, come to the group on Facebook and drop the link to the Hebrew Spear on the Genesis 49ers resources page. All right. With that, I'm gonna bid you farewell.
Yeah. A real robot. Yo. I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper, I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper. This is a keepsake, ayy. And you can keep that tucked away. Some gon' come with the lies. Remember them when you pray. Some gon' cry when they die. But you don't worry about decay. Look, I done whipped up away. My time is short, so I'ma live it today. That shit was real. What happened to them slaves? Ay, but you gotta be brave. This a land of the free. Gotta move like waves. Ay, put the pen to the pad. I give them path for the rage. Then I put them on a path to take them all off the stage. I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper, I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper. This is a keepsake, ayy. You can use this right away. Some gon' come with the truth. Honor them when you pray. Some gon' laugh about their life. They don't worry about delays. Look, I done whipped up away that level's real when you can use it today. Don't worry about how you're gonna get paid. Lord, give it free, take it away, ayy. Don't you wanna be free? Remove that rage. There's a path to the light, ayy. Don't misuse those ways. We float with the truth. Gotta move like waves. I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper, I got a visa. That's one swipe, they change your demeanor. I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up at my leisure. I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper.
Seven candlesticks up, and we've been telling you niggas, it ain't a debate, it's a stick up gang.